The new neighbor and the first sign of trouble. It was a quiet Sunday morning in Maple Grove, the kind of neighborhood where lawns were trimmed like carpets and mailboxes stood in perfect rows. I had lived there for 6 years, and things were peaceful, at least until she moved in. Her name was Karen Whitmore, though we didn't need to be told that. She introduced herself to the entire block by putting flyers on everyone's door about community standards, before even saying hello. Within a week, she was sitting on the HOA board, and within 2, she was acting like she owned the whole street. Karen was the kind of person who measured grass with a ruler. She complained about kids' bicycles being left out, about holiday lights being too bright, and about people leaving trash cans visible for more than an hour after pickup. At first, I tried to ignore her. I had work, a family, and a life. My house was always clean, my lawn neat, my cars parked properly. But ignoring Karen was like ignoring a thunderstorm. Sooner or later, she was going to make noise. It started small. One morning, she left a note on my mailbox. Your fence color may not meet HOA tone requirements. Please repaint within 14 days. That was strange, because the HOA approved my fence 2 years ago. When I checked with the HOA president, he said, "Oh, Karen's new. She's enthusiastic." I let it go. Everyone deserves a little grace when they're new. But then came the day she blocked my driveway. It was a Wednesday morning. I had to leave for work around 8 a.m., and there, right across my driveway, sat Karen's silver SUV. Not just close, completely blocking me in. Her car was perfectly centered, as if she'd done it on purpose. I thought maybe she'd just run inside for a minute. I waited 5 minutes, 10, 15, still nothing. So I walked over and knocked on her door. She opened it, wearing her usual smug smile. "Good morning, Mark," she said sweetly. "Problem?" "Yeah," I said, keeping calm. "Your car's blocking my driveway." "I need to head out." Her expression didn't change. "Oh, that's fine. I'm hosting an HOA planning meeting here in an hour." "It's temporary, right, but I need to go now," I replied, trying not to sound angry. "Can you please move it?" Karen crossed her arms. "I have permission to park here for HOA business." I blinked. "Permission from who?" "The HOA board," she said proudly. "You are the HOA board," I reminded her. She tilted her head, smiling like she'd just won something. "Exactly." For a moment I just stared at her, not sure if she was joking or serious. When I realized she wasn't moving, I went back inside, took out my phone and took a few photos. Then I called a friend from work to say I'd be late. 2 hours later, she finally moved her car, without a word. No apology, no explanation. Just climbed in, reversed, and drove off like nothing had happened. That night I checked the HOA rulebook. Nowhere did it say board members could block private driveways. In fact, it clearly said, "No vehicle shall obstruct access to another homeowner's property." The next morning, I printed that section out and slipped it into a mailbox with a short note. "In case you missed this part of the rules you enforce." "Mark! Petty!" "Maybe, but satisfying." "Definitely. I thought that would be the end of it." I was wrong. The next week, I found another note on my door. "Your lawn appears overgrown by 1/2 inch. Please trim it to maintain neighborhood standards." 1/2 inch. She had taken photos, printed them, and attached them to the letter. That's when I realized Karen wasn't just strict. She was on a power trip. She wanted control, and anyone who didn't play along became a target. The other neighbors started complaining too. One lady down the street said Karen threatened to fine her for decorative stones in her garden. Another guy said she accused him of non-compliant mailbox dimensions. Everyone was frustrated, but nobody wanted to confront her. She had a loud voice, a short temper, and a scary confidence in her fake authority. I tried to stay out of it. Until one morning, she parked across my driveway again. Same spot. Same smug attitude. This time I didn't knock on her door. I didn't ask politely. I just stood there, staring at that shiny silver SUV, and realized something. She thought no one could stop her, and that was the moment I decided I was going to prove her wrong. The escalation. After the second time Karen blocked my driveway, something in me snapped, not in anger but in resolve. I realized I couldn't let this go on. If I stayed quiet, she'd just keep pushing. And it wasn't just me anymore. It was the whole neighborhood suffering under her rules. That morning, instead of knocking on her door, I took photos. I took pictures from 3 different angles. Clear shots of her car across my driveway, the house number visible, the date and time on my phone screen. I even filmed a short video for proof. When she finally moved the car hours later, I didn't say a word. I just smiled and waved. She smiled back, thinking she'd won. That afternoon, I went to the HOA office. It wasn't far, a small building near the community pool. Inside, I met Paul, the HOA president, an older man with tired eyes and a patient tone. He looked like someone who'd dealt with too much neighborhood drama already. "Paul," I began, "I need to talk about one of the board members, Karen Whitmore." His face immediately tensed. "Oh boy," he sighed. "What happened this time?" I showed him the photos and videos. He frowned as he scrolled through them. "Yeah, that's not okay. She's not allowed to block private access like that. Then why is she still doing it?" I asked. Paul sighed again. "Technically, we can't enforce city parking violations, only community rule violations. We can send her a warning letter, but she's on the board, so she'll probably vote to ignore it." I laughed bitterly. "So she breaks the rules, then votes against her own punishment?" He shrugged helplessly. "Welcome to HOA politics." It was clear the HOA wouldn't help me, so I decided to help myself. That night, I went through the entire HOA handbook again, every single page. Then I pulled up the city's municipal code on parking regulations. It took an hour of reading, but I found exactly what I needed. Any vehicle obstructing residential driveways is subject to immediate towing, with or without owner consent, under Local Traffic Ordinance 17-3.05. Bingo. It wasn't an HOA issue. It was a city issue. And that meant I had real power. The next morning, I called the city parking enforcement line. A calm voice answered, "City Parking Division, how can I help you?" I explained the situation and sent them the photos. After a few minutes, the officer said, "Sir, you're within your rights, but since it's an HOA property, we'll need police presence if you want the vehicle towed. Just call us when it happens again, and we'll send an officer to supervise." That was exactly what I needed to hear. I thanked them and hung up, feeling like I had a secret weapon. Over the next few days, Karen's behavior got worse. She started writing up fake violations against me. Unapproved garden light fixture. Trash can visible for more than 15 minutes after pickup. Mailbox paint fading. Violation of Section 4A. Each one came with a $25 warning fine. It was laughable. She was clearly trying to provoke me. One evening, I decided to attend the next HOA meeting. I hadn't gone to one in years, but I was done staying silent. The meeting was held in the community clubhouse. About 20 homeowners showed up. Karen sat at the front table, clipboard in hand, smiling like a queen. When it came time for community concerns, I raised my hand. "Yes, Mark," she said sweetly, her tone dripping with fake politeness. "I just wanted to ask," I began, holding up my phone, "why an HOA board member is parking across residents' driveways. I thought that was against both HOA and city rules." The room went quiet. Karen's smile twitched for a moment before she replied, "Oh, that was temporary. I was conducting HOA business." "Funny," I said. "The photos say it was parked there for 3 hours, twice." A few people chuckled. Someone whispered, "That's true, I saw it too." Karen's cheeks flushed pink. "You're being disruptive, Mark. This is not the time." "This is exactly the time," I interrupted. "Because if the HOA board can break the rules without consequence, then what's the point of any of this?" Paul, the HOA president, cleared his throat. "Karen, maybe you should address this properly." Karen glared at him. "There's nothing to address." "He's exaggerating," I smiled. "Great. Then you won't mind if I forward the photos and videos to the city parking enforcement team, right?" Now the color drained from her face. She leaned closer and hissed, "You wouldn't dare." "Oh, I would," I said calmly. "And next time it happens, the tow truck will be here with a police escort." The room broke into murmurs. A few neighbors nodded approvingly. Paul raised his hands to calm everyone down, but it was clear. The entire neighborhood had just seen Karen get cornered. After the meeting, as people left, several neighbors came up to me quietly. "Good for you." "Man," one said. "She's been bullying everyone," said another. Finally, someone added, "If you need witnesses, I'll back you up." That night, I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee watching the street. For the first time in weeks, I felt relaxed. But deep down, I knew Karen wasn't done. People like her never back off after being embarrassed. They double down. And I was right. 2 mornings later, when I opened my garage to leave for work, there it was again, her silver SUV blocking my driveway. Except this time, she'd left a note under my wiper. "Call the HOA if you have a problem," I smiled. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. The tow truck plan. The moment I saw Karen's note on my windshield, I laughed out loud. She'd crossed the line, again, and this time I had everything ready. I took photos just like before, the car's position, the driveway blocked, the note under my wiper. Then I opened my phone and scrolled to the number I'd saved days ago, City Parking Enforcement. I pressed call. "City Parking, how can I help you?" The same calm voice answered. "This is Mark Lewis," I said. "I called last week about a vehicle blocking my driveway again. I have photos, and it's still here. Do you have the license plate number?" The officer asked. I gave it to him along with the address. He paused, then said, "All right, Mr. Lewis, we'll dispatch a tow truck and an officer for verification. Please stay by the vehicle until they arrive." I couldn't believe it. This was really happening. The plan was finally in motion. I sat on my porch, sipping coffee, pretending to scroll my phone while keeping an eye on the street. 15 minutes later, I saw a black and white police cruiser roll slowly down the block. Right behind it was a yellow tow truck with flashing amber lights. Neighbors peeked out from behind curtains. Some stepped out onto their lawns. Word spread fast in Maple Grove. Something was about to go down. The police car stopped in front of my driveway. A tall officer stepped out, sunglasses on, calm but serious. "You the one who called?" he asked. "Yes, sir," I said, showing him the photos. "That's the car. My driveway's been blocked since 7 a.m. He nodded. "And this isn't your vehicle?" "No, belongs to my neighbor. She's an HOA board member." He raised an eyebrow. "Ah, one of those stories." He took out a small notepad and started writing. Then he knocked on Karen's door, no answer. He knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. "All right," he said finally, waving the tow truck forward. "She's been warned before?" "Twice," I said. "I have records." "That's enough," he replied. "We'll document everything." The tow truck driver, a cheerful guy with tattoos, jumped down from his cab. "All right, boss," he said, grinning. "Let's get this baby hooked." As he began attaching chains to the silver SUV, I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and satisfaction. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice. About standing up to someone who thought they were untouchable. Then it happened. Karen's front door burst open. She stormed out wearing her robe and slippers, hair a mess, shouting before she even reached the curb. "What do you think you're doing?" The officer turned to her calmly. "Ma'am, is this your vehicle?" "Yes, and you have no right to touch it." "I'm a board member of this HOA," she barked. He nodded politely. "Understood, ma'am. But this is a city street, not private HOA property. Your car is illegally obstructing a residential driveway. We have to tow it." She looked stunned. "Illegally?" "I'm on HOA business." The officer flipped his notepad closed. "Doesn't matter, ma'am. City law takes precedence over HOA rules." The tow truck driver chuckled quietly as he continued securing the chains. Karen spun toward me, pointing her finger. "You called them, didn't you? You petty little man." I stayed calm. "Actually, I called the city. Since the HOA can't seem to enforce their own rules." Her face went red. "You're harassing me." "This is harassment." The officer stepped between us. "Ma'am, please step back. You can dispute it later, but right now, your vehicle is being towed under City Ordinance 17-3.05. Karen looked around and realized everyone was watching. Half the street had come out. People were recording on their phones. A few neighbors even clapped quietly. The tow truck driver tightened the last strap, then looked at the officer. "Ready? Proceed." the officer said. With a loud metallic clank, the SUV lifted off the ground. Karen screamed, "You can't do this! You'll regret this!" The officer handed her a small slip of paper. "This has the impound lot address and the citation number. You can pick up your car after paying the fine." Karen snatched the paper and stormed back inside, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. The tow truck driver gave me a thumbs up before driving away, the silver SUV bouncing slightly behind him. For a moment, silence fell over the neighborhood. Then the whispering began. "Did you see that? Finally, someone stood up to her. She deserved that." I just smiled, nodded to the officer, and thanked him for his help. He smiled back. "Good job staying calm. Most people would have lost it long ago." "Honestly," I said, "I almost did." He chuckled. "Well, you handled it the right way. Paper trail, photos, patience. That's how you beat people like that." As he left, I turned back toward my house. My heart was pounding, but not from fear, from relief. Weeks of frustration had finally ended with one satisfying moment. I went inside, made another cup of coffee, and sat by the window. Across the street, I saw my neighbors smiling and waving. One of them, Mrs. Howard, gave me a thumbs up from her porch. It felt like the whole neighborhood had just taken a deep breath for the first time in months. But deep down, I knew Karen wouldn't let it end here. People like her don't forgive, they plot. And from the way her curtains twitched that evening, I could tell she was already planning her next move. The showdown. For a few days after the tow truck incident, the street was quiet. No notes on my door, no violations, no Karen. It almost felt peaceful. Neighbors waved at me when I walked outside. A few even stopped to chat, thanking me for finally standing up to the HOA witch, as one guy put it. I laughed, but I stayed cautious. Karen wasn't the type to disappear quietly. Sure enough, peace didn't last long. That Friday evening, as I came home from work, I found a bright yellow envelope taped to my door, marked Urgent HOA Violation. I sighed and opened it. Inside was a letter that read, "Your fence color remains non-compliant despite prior warnings. Immediate repainting required within 7 days. Failure to comply will result in a $250 fine and possible HOA legal action. Signed, Karen Whitmore, HOA Compliance Chair." I laughed out loud. The fence again. She was really trying to push me, so I did what I always did. I took photos. The fence, the letter, the date. Then I walked across the street to talk to my neighbor Paul, the HOA president. When he opened the door, he looked exhausted. "Let me guess," he said. "Another letter?" I nodded. "Fence color again." He rubbed his temples. "I'm so sorry, Mark. I've been getting calls from half the neighborhood. She's out of control. Can't she be removed from the board?" I asked. Paul hesitated. "Technically, yes. But it takes a majority vote from homeowners during an open meeting. We can't just fire her." I smiled slowly. "Then let's have a meeting." Paul raised an eyebrow. "You're serious?" "Very," I said. "It's time we stop letting her run everything." 2 weeks later, flyers went up across the neighborhood. Special HOA meeting, concerns regarding board conduct. It didn't say her name, but everyone knew who it was about. By the time the meeting started, the clubhouse was packed. Even people who usually avoided HOA stuff came. You could feel the tension in the air. Karen sat at the front, wearing a sharp red suit, chin high, eyes full of fake confidence. She looked like she was running for office. Paul opened the meeting. "We're here to discuss several complaints from residents about the recent conduct of one of our board members." Karen immediately stood up. "Before we begin, I'd like to say this is clearly a targeted attack against me. Certain individuals," she glanced straight at me, "have been spreading false accusations." I leaned back, calm. "Everything I've said has proof." Her lips tightened. "Oh, I'm sure your camera roll is full of them," she said mockingly. A few people in the crowd laughed. She thought she had control again. Paul raised his hand. "Let's keep it civil. Mark, you have the floor." I stood up, holding a small folder. "Thank you. I won't take long. I just want to show everyone what's been happening." I handed out printed photos, her car blocking my driveway, timestamps visible, along with her handwritten note. People began whispering. I continued. She fined me for a fence color that was approved 2 years ago. She sent violation letters to 5 other homes for decorations that follow HOA guidelines. And when I called the city because she broke the law, she accused me of harassment. Karen jumped up. Because that's what it was. You had my car towed in front of everyone like some kind of stunt. A man in the back stood up. You blocked his driveway, Karen. I saw it myself. Yeah! Another voice added. You fined me for leaving my Christmas lights up 1 extra day. More voices joined in. The room filled with angry chatter. Paul raised his voice. Please, let's keep order. But the crowd was done keeping quiet. Karen turned red, her voice rising above the noise. You're all ungrateful. I've done more for this community than anyone here. I spoke softly but firmly. No, Karen, you did things to this community, not for it. That line hit hard. The room went silent. Paul took a deep breath and said, We'll take a vote. All in favor of removing Karen Whitmore from the HOA board, please raise your hand. Hands went up, almost everyone in the room. Karen's mouth dropped open. You can't do this. I have authority. Paul cut her off gently. Not anymore. The community has spoken. She stood frozen, eyes wide, then suddenly grabbed her things and stormed toward the door. As she passed me, she hissed, You think you've won? You'll regret this. The door slammed behind her. For a moment, no one moved. Then the room erupted in cheers. People clapped, laughed, hugged. It felt like the entire neighborhood had just been freed from a dictatorship. Paul turned to me, smiling for the first time in weeks. Mark, thank you. You handled this better than anyone could have, I nodded. Just happy to have my driveway back. That night, the neighborhood felt lighter, literally and emotionally. People stood outside talking, joking, celebrating the end of the HOA reign of terror. But even as I smiled and waved goodnight, I couldn't shake the thought. Karen wasn't the type to leave quietly, and when I saw her for sale sign appear 2 days later, I wondered if this really was the end, or just her retreat to plan another battle somewhere else. The aftermath. After that explosive HOA meeting, things in Maple Grove slowly went back to normal, or at least as normal as a neighborhood can be after months of drama. For the first time in a long while, people were smiling when they walked their dogs. Kids were playing in the street again. The air just felt lighter, like someone had lifted a heavy weight off the whole block. Karen, however, vanished from sight. Her SUV didn't return, and her blinds stayed closed. No angry notes, no late-night emails, no fake violation letters. 2 days later, a for sale sign appeared in front of her house. No one was surprised. Rumor was she'd been fined by the city for the driveway obstruction and slapped with towing and impound fees, over $400 in total. On top of that, she'd lost her position on the HOA board. For someone like Karen, who lived off control, that must have been unbearable. One evening, as I was mowing my lawn, I noticed her in her yard for the first time since the meeting. She was pulling weeds in silence, no clipboard in hand, no authority in her voice. Just a woman quietly packing up her pride. For a moment I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. She looked up, noticed me watching, and for the first time she didn't glare or smirk. She just said softly, "You got what you wanted." I shut off the mower. "No, Karen, I just wanted my driveway back." She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something else, but then she sighed and went inside without another word. That was the last real conversation we ever had. Over the next few weeks, things improved in small but powerful ways. The HOA board, now led by Paul, rewrote several community rules to make them fairer. They removed unnecessary fines, added an online complaint system so homeowners could appeal violations, and even started monthly neighborhood socials, barbecues and movie nights, to bring people together instead of driving them apart. And for once, people showed up happily. At the first event, someone handed me a paper plate stacked with grilled burgers and said, "To the man who saved Maple Grove." Everyone laughed, but honestly, I didn't feel like a hero. I just did what anyone should do. Stand up when someone crosses the line. Still, I couldn't deny it felt good seeing neighbors talking and laughing again. Even the ones who used to hide from Karen's clipboard now stayed out until sunset, catching up like old friends. Paul came over and clapped me on the shoulder. "You know," he said, "we should have done this a long time ago." I smiled. "Sometimes it just takes one bad apple to remind everyone else they're on the same tree," he laughed. "That's one way to put it." A month later, a moving truck pulled up in front of Karen's house. She didn't wave goodbye. She didn't even look around. She just got into her SUV, now free of tow truck chains, and drove off without a single glance back. Her house sold quickly too. The new owners were a young couple with 2 little kids. Within a week, the front porch had flower pots, toys, and laughter. The difference was night and day. That's when I realized something. Karen's chaos had actually brought the community closer. We'd gone from strangers to allies, people who looked out for each other instead of hiding behind HOA letters. One evening, as I sat on my porch, the sun setting over the quiet street, my neighbor Mrs. Howard walked by and said, "Feels peaceful again, doesn't it?" I smiled. "Yeah, it finally feels like home." A few months later, I got a surprise in the mail, an official-looking envelope from the city. For a second, I thought it might be another fine, but when I opened it, it was a certificate of appreciation. It read, "For exemplary civic responsibility and cooperation with city parking enforcement, City of Brookvale." I laughed out loud. Karen had tried to punish me with her rules, and now I had an award for following the real ones. I framed it and hung it right by my front door. Not out of pride, but as a reminder. When someone abuses power, the best way to fight back isn't shouting, it's knowing the rules better than they do. The months rolled by, and life was good. No more HOA harassment, no more false fines, no more silver SUV blocking my driveway. Sometimes, on quiet mornings, I'd think back to that moment when the tow truck pulled away with Karen's car, her face red with fury, and the whole neighborhood watching. It wasn't about revenge. It was about fairness, about taking back peace from someone who thrived on control. I still wave to the new neighbors. We still have community cookouts and late-night chats by the sidewalk. And every time someone new moves in, we tell them the story. The legend of HOA Karen, the one where the tow truck came with a police escort and the neighborhood took its freedom back. People always laugh, but there's a lesson hidden in it. Never let bullies hide behind authority. Rules are meant to protect people, not to control them. And as for me, every time I pull my truck out of that driveway, I smile. Because that empty space, clear, wide, and free, reminds me of the day peace finally parked itself right back where it belonged.